Hey everyone, it's Jack and I'm currently sat outside the RWA in Bristol. It is really warm. As you can see Bristol masquerading for, I don't know, Italy in the background there. This is a video blog where I'm going to talk a bit about looking at art and talking about art, and the aim of the video is to increase confidence with looking and talking about art. And the way I'm going to do that is by modelling and talking about how I would begin to think about an exhibition or talk about an exhibition. I'm going to do that live. So I'm here going to an exhibition called Togetherness, which I kind of on purpose have not found out too much about. So that I'll be able to go in there relatively fresh. I don't go to a huge amount of exhibitions at this gallery in Bristol in particular, so again I thought that might be quite interesting. But yeah, I'm just going to take you through this kind of live experience of my reactions and thoughts about the thing, and use that as a way of kind of generally opening up this discussion about how you talk about art. I think one of the key things I try and get across with my teaching is this idea that I guess there's often this idea proliferated that is there's some kind of special kind of people that are in the know and are somehow able to talk about art or understand art. I think that's the key thing, understanding art, that there's some key that you can get that suddenly unlocks all of this stuff for you, and there's people that are in the know. So one of my main teaching principles is that anyone can do that, and that there are easy tools that we can use to help us talk about art or discuss art, and actually for everyone, and everyone can experience it on whatever kind of level. So I'm going to go into that a bit further. As I'm starting to talk and go around the exhibition, I want you to be thinking about how you do this when you go to an art exhibition. What are the questions you have? How do you approach looking at the art? Are you usually just confused at the end of this experience? What are moments where you've really enjoyed going to an exhibition, and what are the things that have stood out to you about that? As I say, I don't know very much about this exhibition. I might really like it, I might really not like it. We shall see. Now, some of you might know that I run a gallery with another artist called East Bristol Contemporary, which is in a totally different part of Bristol. And when we do shows at our gallery, we always try and feature an event where we have the artists come and be in the exhibition, and we talk with them about the artwork and have it as quite an informal kind of discussion group. We're able to kind of pick out some stuff from the exhibition and talk to the artists firsthand about their work. And this is always so interesting, and such a great way of experiencing the exhibition. I think of all of the events we do at the gallery, those artist talk and tours are some of the best things that we do, and I think they're really eye-opening, even for us who have organised those shows, put them together, and potentially know quite a bit about the artist's work anyway. We're always learning stuff from those experiences, and also picking up on what other people are saying about it, other people that members of the public that are coming in, and just their reactions on the shows and the artist's work as well. As you can see from the sticker on my chest, I've actually paid to get into this one. And this is most definitely the way that you get people to come and look at art. So as you can see, I'm now in the exhibition. My original plan was to actually talk over the videos as I was filming, but as you can probably guess, I'm the only person in this exhibition other than the invigilator, so initially finding it really awkward, the idea of me just speaking directly into the camera. So what in fact I'm going to do is, this is a later recorded narration that you're listening to now, which is not ideal, I admit that, but I couldn't bring myself to do it in the moment. So what in fact I'm going to do is talk like this, and also quite a lot of the clips that you're looking at now will be slowed down as well, to give me a chance to actually talk about the things before they disappear. So what you're looking at is some initial shots I was taking of the show as a whole, to give like a broad picture of what the exhibition was like. Throughout this, I want you to be thinking about how you might be thinking if you were experiencing this exhibition for the first time. So as I'm coming into the space, the first thing I'm going to be looking at is, how does the exhibition look overall? Like, how are things positioned? What's the use of the space like? What the gallery itself is like. The gallery itself is really, really beautiful space. You can see there's these like two rooms that form the exhibition, and then to the right there's a separate exhibition, which I won't talk about. The galleries themselves have a sort of that kind of standard city art gallery kind of museum quality to them, almost like a sort of Tate space as well. And maybe that's my initial reaction on the curation of the show, is that the works are quite kind of safely installed. There's a lot of work on the wall. There's a lot of use of plinths to show work. There's not a huge amount of material actually in the middle of the space. It almost feels like, I mentioned the Tate. It almost feels like a Tate show, where they're like tape around objects telling you not to touch or go near, or like those little string kind of setups that stop you from getting too close to the work. It feels quite like that. You can see that they've positioned this big rhino sculpture right in the entrance. So I guess that's, it's the first thing you see in the show. It's meant to maybe draw you in or kind of get you excited or interested there. Which is interesting because it is by far the largest sculptural work in the show, and it's sort of, it's there, and it doesn't take that long to experience it itself. One of the things I like to try and avoid is reading about the show. Like, it's almost always some kind of print or vinyl on the wall that talks about the show itself and some of the ideas that the curator had when they put the show together. And I like to try and experience the show fresh, first of all, and kind of draw my own conclusions about it before going and reading that information. I can work out whether my suspicions or what I thought about the show actually match up with what's written about the work itself, and I find that quite interesting. If you've already read about the piece, then that really limits the way that you can experience a work. So that's one tip. This show has loads of information on the wall. There's stuff about every piece, so it is quite kind of user-friendly in that sense. But as I say, that can really limit the way that you experience a work. So yeah, initially I'm avoiding doing that. You can see all these plaques next to the works, and personally I'm really not that keen on them. I think that sort of thing can be done by like quite a subtle little number or a map in a guide. I much prefer having like a little handout that's discussing the work further, and also makes it possible to have a lot more text should you wish, without having to have these big plaques next to works. Yeah, actually I find that quite off-putting. I like the work to be able to have space to breathe. The reason I've included this shot is to demonstrate a point. This floor is in a really poor condition, as you can see from that. I don't know a huge amount about about the upkeep of the gallery or the funding they have to put on these shows, but definitely one of the first things I really noticed, and actually was reminded when I re-entered the space, because I've been in there before, was about how some of the condition of some of the walls and the floor. And this, it seems pernickety, but this has a real influence on the way you're experiencing a show. As I go on to talk about a few works more specifically, you might think, oh, you're being a bit kind of specific about the way that the work is put together or installed, or if I think something's been well done or is a bit shoddy. But I think that is really important and integral to the presentation of a work, and it's something I'm always looking at, about the production values of the work itself and the show as a whole, because that that does really affect your experience of it. And equally, you might think, as I'm talking about these things, it's like I'm, rather than talking about the artwork, it's more that I'm reviewing the artwork, and I think actually that's fine. What else are your thoughts other than some kind of personal review of the show as you're going round? So I'm about to move on to talking about some of the works specifically. I've picked out a few that I thought would be interesting to discuss. I don't have enough time in this video to do all of them. Before that, I thought it was good to get an outside perspective in. So this is Georgia Hall, who's assistant curator at Spike Island, and she's going to give her top 3 tips on looking at art before we explore some of the other works in more detail.
So I was going to talk about the three things that I think about when I look at artwork in the gallery space. So we're currently at Tate Liverpool looking at Heike Yang's exhibition for the Liverpool Biennial 2018. So the first thing that I might think about or look at is to read about the conceptual ideas, what the artist is looking at, why they're looking at those themes, and then that leads on to the second thing, which is how that might relate to an audience, like why it's in a certain space or a location or a city, and how that might be interesting for its audiences and how it might connect to the people that are looking at these artworks. And then on more of a logistical side, I might also look at the technicalities of an artwork, how it's installed, how it was put together, the space, how the work might interact with the space, and maybe limitations of the space which might make it difficult to install, whether you can hear the sound. So this work, for example, has a sound piece, and also whether things are maybe real, or maybe they're made by the artists themselves, or maybe the technicians. So more of the logistics as well as that. Great.
So here's one of the very first works in the show. You can see it's a sort of digital reproduction of a photograph. I'm initially attracted to talking about this one, I suppose, because I'm quite into graphic design, and here we've got what looks to be a sign that features in a street somewhere, presumably in France. We've got chien, French for dog, and yeah, I guess these are the sort of images that I might be taking if I'm out and about in the street. So that kind of catches my attention. I quite like the illustration of the dog to one side. We've got below it this kind of shielded portion. Below the chien, there's a sticker of some kind. This is all part of the photograph. And then I'm particularly interested in the way this is installed, because I found it quite jarring personally. It's sort of got this wooden backing that you'll see in a second with the photograph, a sort of plastic sort of some kind of plastic material that's for the reproduction of the photograph, and I just found it a bit of a strange way of presenting the work. You do get this kind of trompe-l'oeil thing happening where the sign itself is probably about the size that it would have been in reality. So I quite like that it's been reproduced at that size, but it just felt a little bit kind of odd to me. So I'm thinking this is a Beware of the Dog sign, and we've got probably the Beware section covered up by a sticker. So we have this nice thing of the image of the dog and then the word dog. And I guess that changes the way you read the image of the dog, that suddenly, rather than maybe aggression, you're seeing that the dog is kind of friendlier, or there's this sort of, the illustration itself loses, it changes its power in some way. So I'm quite interested in that. And actually, after looking at the work and reading about it, this is what has happened, that the artists have masked off this Beware of the Dog. The artists themselves, a group called Clairefontaine. Apparently they've, this is stuff I read, apparently they took the name from I think a perfume or makeup brand, and then they're multiple people, it's not just one, despite sounding like the one person. So yeah, as I say, attracted to the work initially. I liked it, and that can be enough. That can be enough for you to just say, oh, actually, I'm quite into this image, and then to think about, why am I into it? And for me, this was about the text and the images that's presented to you. Albeit, I said that I didn't really get on with the presentation of the work, and I found it a bit strange. Maybe more interesting to have the actual sign in the space, or just a different way of showing the work. So next work, we've got spade and a shovel, image of a spade with a shovel. Again, interestingly, probably life-size, I think, and they're leaned up against the wall. I quite like that way of presenting it. It makes me think of how an actual shovel or spade would be lent in the gallery space. I think that's quite fun. It does cause me to question, like, why it's a digital photograph rather than sculpture in itself. I had a look at the title of the work, which is called A Spade, and found that idea quite funny, that you've got this spade and then shovel as well. Reflecting further, it probably is this fact that it's an image rather than a sculpture that is kind of funny or interesting about it, maybe what drew me to it. It's a very sort of simple image. I like that. The work itself is by an artist duo called Harrison and Wood, who are local to Bristol. A lot of their work has this kind of one-liner or sort of kind of lightness of kind of jokiness about it. In this situation, it was interesting to read the information about it. It was talking about how it was a self-portrait of the two of them, and how they're often thought to be actually similar people or the same person, and then you've got this kind of spade as a spade joke, and I felt reading about it added to it, but also I simply quite liked it as the image itself. There's another work by the same artists. This one, unfortunately, is quite difficult to see because of just the way my camera's captured it. Sometimes you have this problem capturing other videos, but I'll try and talk about it and explain what we're seeing. So we've got this mountaineer that you can see here. Actually, a pair of mountaineers eventually appear, which as I'm watching it, I'm assuming it's the artists playing the part. It becomes clear that they're not on a real mountain. This is probably set in a studio somewhere, and they've tried to do it as convincingly as possible, but it's definitely a lack of kind of air and wind hitting them, and like several other kind of indicators that they're not in it. So that's something I noticed initially about the work. The way they're moving as well is not doesn't quite match up with the way that I'd expect kind of mountaineers to be. Sort of difference in the confidence, or maybe a kind of idealistic nature of what the top of a mountain would actually look like. I'm not sure they would look like this, but it sort of makes me think of the Evian water bottle or something like that. It's kind of quite pure vision of it. Again, with similar to the last work, I found it quite amusing, like quite like the idea of this sort of fake mountain top experience. I found it quite funny. The show actually featured quite a number of works by this duo of artists who I know are local to Bristol, and actually I found that quite funny itself, in a way that this show featured a number of Bristol artists, and presumably works that were kind of easier to get hold of, and I guess that was in the back of my mind when I was looking at the show as well, like how the conversations had been built around the show, and how the exhibition had come to receive these works, with some of the artists being probably there at the opening and present in the exhibition, and some of them being international artists that would have just shipped the work to them, or their gallery assistants would have shipped the work over to Bristol. In terms of the presentation of the work, I think it works to have it on this big flat screen. It suits the quality of the image. There's this quite kind of lush studio blue background thing happening, and that's picked up quite well by this big LG TV. I thought the way it was presented fitted with the work, which is something I'm quite keen on seeing. Like, you look at the quality of the video and then what kind of screen it's being shown on. So yeah, that seemed appropriate. So initially drawn to this work just because of its colours and the design of it. As I approach it, I'm thinking, what's it made of? How are these images being created? As you look at it further, you realise that this is some kind of double mattress, like a bed mattress that has been leaned against the wall, and then it has these images printed directly onto it. You can see the kind of tiling of the sections of the mattress, and these are actually sewn in, so that the white space, the white little details in there is thread that's sewn in. So it's actually this design is kind of in the physicality of the mattress. Pieces by Wade Geaton and Kelly Walker, another collaboration piece. It's not clear to me exactly what the details are, but I just found, again, I found the piece quite fun. I like the fact that it was a mattress. It has this kind of utility thing of a mattress versus the unutility of an artwork, and it's kind of now pointless. Now it's leant against the wall. Onto this tiled work here. It's a selection of kind of decorative tiles. I found them really quite attractive as tiles. I thought, I could imagine these in my bathroom. I'd be pretty keen on them. However, I felt like they sat really weirdly in the rest of the show. The previous works we've looked at are very much kind of arts objects, and then suddenly you're throwing in this kind of utility, kind of functional work here that kind of balances this decorative, functional thing. And then they were sat alongside this video that showed, amongst lots of other things, the making of the tiles themselves and all these kind of craft and physical processes that were being carried out in this split screen video here. I really didn't like the way the video was presented. I thought it was fine to be on this again, big flat screen TV, but the quality of the videos were actually really poor, as if they'd been ripped off the internet or something. It felt like the file was not working properly, and the video itself seemed like it was too small, and just the quality of it was bad. It was pixelated and grainy. I just thought it was quite shoddy curation to leave that as it was and not get another version of the video. The video itself was interesting enough and I saw it very much as documentation of processes, which again sort of didn't feel that fitting with the other stuff that had been in the show. So again, a little bit jarring. The works themselves are by a collective called Assemble, who actually recently, a couple of years ago, won the Turner Prize. So they definitely rose to prominence, and one of the major projects they were involved in was regeneration of a number of houses in an area of Liverpool, and they used a lot of these kind of handmade processes to create furnishings and furniture for these houses. So these works very much exist as documentation of those processes. I just found them really odd to sit in this exhibition. Almost felt like they would exist in kind of some kind of learning resource. There's even this catalogue to the bottom. that they produced a kind of printed publication of the products that they've been making. Yeah, I just found it an odd piece to include in the show, and it felt like the show was just using them because they're a well-known group, as I say, that had risen to prominence, and it felt like they should have one of their works in this exhibition. And yeah, I didn't really get on with it. Onto these three works here that are quite large, hung from probably nails or attachments with these kind of peg clips. I like the way that they're the same colour as the material itself. I thought that was a good attention to detail with the way they were being displayed. I quite like the sizings of them. The material is interesting. It's like a foam of some kind, and you have these quite kind of sharp, detailed designs of linear structures and text as well. That's kind of hidden text and letters and glyphs, and I like the way that they're very kind of precise and cut out, and then the rest of the surface is kind of picked away. You can see these little craters and dips and stuff where the artists have kind of, it looks very much like they've pulled the stuff away by hand. It looks like kind of upholstery when it starts getting into a bit of a state, or it's becoming kind of dilapidated. Yeah, I was pretty keen on these works. An admission now that I actually have worked with the artists that made this before, Clawson and Ward, so I know quite a bit about their practice, and whilst I hadn't seen these works before, have seen similar things by them, and I've been keen on those as well. Reading about it, they talked a bit about bus seats where they get picked away, and these kind of moments of vandalism, and that made total sense to me. I really kind of, that resonated with me with the pieces, so I felt that element had really worked. Although Western art history celebrates the individual artist, very few artists work in complete isolation. For as long as there has been art, there have been artists working together. Recently, artist groups and duos have been gaining momentum in the art world. Togetherness offers a glimpse into some of the collaborative practices that are flourishing locally, nationally, internationally. These include Wood and Harrison's humorous enactments of the trials and tribulations of sharing one space with another, projects of Assemble, which empower communities to reinvent their environments. Artists in Togetherness differ greatly in terms of their attitudes towards collaboration. Claire Fontaine reject the terminology and assume the singular name of a stationary band in order to remain anonymous. So I tried to read that really quickly. That was quite difficult. A little bit of insight into the show and the curation. So as I say, I'm pretty keen on reading that kind of stuff at the end of the show, once I've actually formulated some opinions. I've finished talking about individual works now. Sorry to just suddenly cut into that spiel. Hopefully that's given you some kind of insight into the ways I might look at art and things that might kind of pique my interest and make me want to kind of look into them further or find out more. And I think there's really this balance that I'm trying to get at between your initial reactions on a work and how you feel about it, what might be attracting you to it, and also thinking about what it looks like and how it's presented to an audience versus like actually having more information about the show and these the text or whatever that might accompany the exhibition as a way of helping you out, giving you insights into the work. But really for me, it's important that an exhibition can work without that added knowledge. Sure, the more you go to exhibitions, the more you're around the art world, the more info you're going to have about these things. Clearly I knew some stuff about the artists that not everyone's going to know going into this exhibition. So I think to kind of come back to talking about the show as a whole, I think, right at the start of the thing, I was talking about how I found the use of space maybe a little wanting for the whole thing, and it reminded me of disappointments I've had going to shows at the RWA previously, and maybe what's put me off going back to things more regularly. I thought the idea of showing work by artist duos or collaborations was interesting. I just felt that that really seemed to be the only thing linking the exhibition, which is fine, but I didn't think the exhibition worked, and I don't think there was enough kind of drawn out of that. Like there were a few suggestions on that opening thing about how you might think about authorship of work, or how people work in collaborations or teams or whatever. And yeah, maybe it does do that, but I felt like there was room for more of the curation to talk about that, and for the possibility of a text to talk about the importance of these things. To me, it literally feels like these are works by people that collaborate. These are works by not artists working in isolation. And whilst I enjoyed some of the works, I found overall, I thought the exhibition was just a bit boring. I mean, why are these works in plinths, in glass cabinets? I don't really think they're that delicate. There's also not that many people going to see these shows. It's not like a Tate Modern or a Tate Britain, and really that is the reference point for me. That I think if you go to Tate Britain's show, that it's a similar setup to this kind of show, but I think they do it so much better. There's so much better idea of the space, and I just at times I found the show jarring. I didn't think there was like a huge amount of continuity or kind of strands running throughout the show that were able to be brought out or talked about. It simply rested on this kind of single premise of the togetherness thing. I didn't like all of the work in the show either. I thought some of the ways of installing the work was quite kind of cack-handed, and just didn't really look very well done. There was like this wire trailing across the floor at one point. The floor wasn't nice. It seemed like they were lacking sort of funds. I just found it unimaginative. I found it quite boring curation. I think a lot more could be done with it. There's so much just to the sides against the walls, and I just didn't really feel like a lot of the works kind of worked together or had any kind of dialogue in any way. Found like having that rhino right at the front is just maybe a bit obvious. It's like a sort of one-liner, and then there isn't really anything more to be taken from it. Whilst I enjoy some individual works in the show, I felt overall a little bit disappointed in the whole thing. What did you think? Thanks for watching the video, and I hope that's drawn out some questions for you.